Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us this morning as we talk about cybersecurity post-COVID. The world as we knew it has changed quite substantially over the last few months, and personally, in my own view, it is not going to go back to what it was pre-COVID. So for example, working from home is going to become the norm rather than the exception. And there will be lots of budget cuts within organizations who will have to weather the economic storm in the coming months, which will expose organizations to greater risks. Hence why understanding cybersecurity post-COVID must become an important subject for us all. So let me mention two items that came to my attention in the news recently. Number one was an article on LinkedIn editors. During February and March, it said, in the MENA region, malware and spam increased by 22% and 36% respectively, just in 2 months. The article also said that globally, cybercrime detections increased by 26% between January and March. So you can see what's happening over here, given the sort of situation, circumstances we're working in. The second example I'll quote here is EasyJet, which announced recently that it was the victim of a cyber attack that exposed the email addresses and travel details of 9 million of their customers, 9 million. The company also said that of these customers, 2,200 plus had their credit card details accessed by what the company described as a highly sophisticated attack. So for me, the big question is, why have cyber attacks increased these last few months? And what can organizations do to ensure that they're prepared for this post-COVID world? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let me introduce our two speakers for today. Sharad Agarwal, who will moderate today's session. Sharad is the founder and CEO of Cybergear, which was launched by Sharad in 1996 as the first one of the first internet services companies in the region. Traditionally in the web, mobile, social, and digital space, Cybergear has ventured into AI and big data solutions, conversational AI, and omni-channel solutions. Cybergear has also recently started offering biometric solutions for monitoring social distancing. That's quite an interesting one. And now also offers cybersecurity solutions in partnership with Risk Quotient, or RQ. Let me introduce the second speaker, the star of this show today, Chaitanya Kunte. He's also known as CK, who is the co-founder and COO of Risk Quotient Solutions and is based in India. So he's talking to us from India. Risk Quotient was set up in Singapore in 2007 and operates out of India, Singapore, and London. RQ provides consultancy services in the areas of enterprise risk management, information risk and data privacy, business continuity planning, and information security compliance. RQ also provides online tools to enable clients to self-assess all aspects of information security and provide specialized training and certification to information security professionals. And that's all that I would say at this stage. I will hand the mic over to Sharad now to carry on with the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Gautam, for that generous introduction. And for those who don't know, Gautam and I are old friends, and
Indeed.
He was responsible for striking this relationship between Cybergear and Risk Quotient. So thank you for that, Gautam, officially. Moving forward, I can see we have 17 participants, and I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening because they are from different parts of the world. Today we are discussing a very important topic. This is serious business. According to Boston Consulting Group, in a study that came out just this past week, 300 million people globally are expected to be working from home. this has consequences, and a lot of them relate to cybersecurity. Are your networks secure? Is your information secure? Are you vulnerable to cyber attacks? These are concerns not only for large organizations, but also for SMEs. In another study that was published by Statista Research Organization just 2 weeks back, 70% of major organizations worldwide will be investing in cybersecurity, which is more than in any other innovative technologies such as AI, big data, IoT, 5G, etc. So hence the importance of this topic, cybersecurity post-COVID. We are lucky to have with us Chaitanya, who's a thought leader, who's a mentor in this field, knows cybersecurity like the back of his hand. So I'm just going to set the stage for today's session. We will have a 20-minute presentation by Chaitanya. All participants can send in their questions through the chat option. I already have a few questions that we received from participants when they were registering, and I'm sure Gautam has a few questions ready as well. So after Chaitanya's presentation, we will have an interactive session with the questions thrown at Chaitanya, and I'm sure he'll be very happy to answer them. So that is pretty much what I have to say. And now I will request Chaitanya to take over and educate us on the importance of cyber security post-COVID. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sharad. Thank you, Gautam, for the wonderful introduction and setting the context for this session. So I would say welcome everyone, all the participants. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And welcome from the trenches. That's what I would like to say. You've been reading the news. You've been trying to understand what has been happening in cybersecurity. And you see a lot of news. There's big news, there's small news, there's news which doesn't get reported. So all of this has happened in cybersecurity, and it keeps happening. And when you read it, you have a certain perception, you have a thought process. You feel like, this, does it apply to me? Does it apply to my organization? Should I be worried? Right. And then now that you have heard that post-COVID cybersecurity is going to be very important, people are going to work from home, there's going to be a different setup, and everything is going to be a sort of a hazy, sort of hazy area where you don't know what has to be done. And that is where we from the trenches of cybersecurity can really sort of give you a direction. And the entire context of these next 20 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes that I'm going to talk about is going to be about what direction to take. I'm not going to get into the details of who gets hacked when, how, and what is the what can happen. I thought I would just talk to you about 5 things to look out in a post-COVID world. 5 things to look out in cybersecurity in a post-COVID world. And that's what we are going to talk about today. Because when you think about cybersecurity, you really want to think about what's happening here, or there is always news, and there is always the type of news that you will come across which will seem to you to be very dramatic. Experian got hacked, you have so many big hacks with millions of data points being hacked, and all of these things happening. Now, we know that you are interested in cybersecurity. We know that that cybersecurity is going to change. So the topic of today is going to be, what do you look out for in cybersecurity post-COVID? I wouldn't say post-COVID, as Gautam put it very, very, very succinctly and very eloquently. He said things are going to change permanently. There's not going to be a post and a pre, now it's changed, and this is where we are today. Don't expect it to go back anywhere. And that's what we are going to focus on. What changes? So let's highlight 5 things that are going to change. But before we move ahead, just remember this. It's a Lamborghini, and I'm sure most of you car enthusiasts will very easily be able to recognize what it is. Hold this image in mind. It's going to help you at the end. So we are not going to ask you questions about this, but if you know which one it is, it will be great. Let's just move ahead with this. And remember the caption, the more things change, right? So let's talk about the first thing that we feel that I feel is going to change. Now, at Risk Quotient, we advise a lot of customers on different aspects of cybersecurity. And based on all of the experience and what we have understood so far in helping customers adopt to COVID, these are the 5 things which we think are going to be the most important things for anybody who is interested in cybersecurity to understand and grasp, so that they can help their organization move in the right direction in cybersecurity. The first thing that you need to know, right? The quick rise of digital. And I'm sure we all know that, and I'm sure Sharad has been talking about it for a few years now. Gautam's been talking about it for some time now, that everything is going to move digital. In fact, if you go to the websites of the large and famous companies, the big blue IBM has on their website digital, and they're selling digital for the last year and a half, or at least the last year that I'm sure of. So they're saying digital services are going to be the next new thing. Now, digital services, yes, they're going to be the next new thing. Things are going to go digital. Now, when I say they're going to go digital, we are looking at certain things here. We are looking at very, very specific areas. We're looking at 3 specific points that we want to talk about. The first is that most organizations are going to reach their customer through digital means. And I'm sure you would have noticed it already happening. You're reaching your customers through digital means, all your sales processes. We are reaching out to each other through digital means. We are talking to each other through digital means. In a pre-COVID era, we would probably be sitting in a seminar room or conference room with a cup of tea in our hands and, talking face to face about this with a microphone and everything. But here we are, most probably in our pajamas, wondering about the future of cybersecurity and thinking about how it's going to change. So yes, we are reaching out to people through digital means. And the sales organization, the sales teams have realized that the only way forward now for the foreseeable future is to be about talking about meeting their customers, reaching out through digital channels. You would have seen the flurry of LinkedIn messages that people are receiving, different webinars, different conferences, people wanting to connect to each other digitally, right? So all of this, Zoom, the stocks of Zoom have gone huge, through the roof. They've zoomed through the roof. So yes, people are reaching out through digital means. People are also delivering their goods and services through digital means. If you're not digital today, you fear becoming extinct. You'll soon become a dinosaur if you don't have a digital service track right now. And a lot of companies have gone through that. A lot of companies have tried to adopt. Some of them have been successful. Some of them have failed. But you know that most companies are trying to move digital. In every industry, whether it is media, where newspapers have suddenly stopped and you have to rely on digital communication, whether it is, so websites of companies suddenly gain prominence. You're delivering your goods and services through digital means. Companies which were originally only customer-facing retail organizations have suddenly had to set up e-commerce stores. All of this is because you want to deliver your goods and services through digital means. And obviously, the way an organization is doing its sales and delivery through digital means, it is also taking its services through digital means. It's also accepting services through digital means. And that means that it is not just the fact that we are having our sales process as an organization, our sales process and our delivery process online. We are also open and accepting our delivery process, our services online. We are accepting more and more services online. So we are accepting other people who want to talk to us. We are accepting the digital invites. We are looking up their websites. We are subscribing to more services, right? Those of you who had not subscribed to, say, an Amazon Prime would probably have already subscribed now, given the situation. So things are moving digital, and we are also accepting more and more services. And this is not going to change. Digital is here to stay, right? Digital has been accelerated, and that creates cybersecurity risks. When I say it creates cybersecurity risks, I'm talking about not just 1 or 2, but a whole plethora of risks that you need to worry about. When you're reaching your customer through the digital means, your customer only knows you through a face on the Zoom call or through your website. What if there is a fake site? What if there is a fake IBM.com which asks you to reach out to you? What if there is a fake risk quotient or a CyberGear website that is asking to reach out to you? How do you take care of it? And the more popular your organization is offline, the more risks you face online. So these are the risks that are going to increase now. There can be more phishing attempts, more and more people who would want to, pretend to be someone else, just throw the fish and see who clicks. This is what Gautam said when he said a lot of attacks have been detected now. Because everybody is relying on the screen. Everybody, all of us today are looking at our screens right now, and we are relying. The screen communicates the truth to us, or so we assume. What if it is not the truth? What if it is not as simple as recognizing a Nigerian prince scam? The scams have gone a lot more complicated now. All of us who are today a part of this call has heard of the Nigerian prince scam, right? There's a prince in Nigeria who sends you an email saying, I want to get out of Nigeria. I have millions of dollars. I want to send them to you so that I can make use of them there. And for your, the pain that you're going to take about it, I'm going to send you or give you $1 million. But can you give me a few $100,000 first so that I can move my money? And we are smarter than that. Or we thought we were smarter than that. But the Nigerian prince scam was 10 years ago. Today's scam, you would probably be equally susceptible, even though you think you can recognize most scams. So for example, I'll give you a very short example before we move ahead. In lockdown situation in India right now, you have to apply for a COVID test and you have to apply for an e-pass to travel somewhere. Once you do it, it's all digital. You apply, you get an acknowledgement, you get an email saying your pass has been approved, or you get an email saying your COVID results. This is happening in India, it's happening in the US, it's happening in countries wherever there was a lockdown, wherever the COVID testing has been gaining prominence. You receive an email which says your COVID test results are here. Now, if you have not done a COVID test, you know it's phishing. But if you have done one, you are very, very susceptible. And this is one of the biggest things of digital. You will start to trust digital more and more. And that is the risk cybersecurity professionals have to worry about. The second part, when you start delivering your goods and services through digital means, you have to also worry about how you're going to deliver them. Are you going to deliver them through third parties? If yes, you're looking at risks in your supply chain. Where does my information pass through? And if so, what is that vendor going to do with that information? If I'm a retail store which had just one outlet and I have decided now that I want to move, I want to probably be a seller on Amazon because that's the biggest channel, or I want to have my own website and rely on, say, a UPS to deliver my packages for me. Am I handing over confidential data to either Amazon or to the courier service provider or to someone else in between? And if so, what is it that I risk? If the data gets leaked, it will not say that UPS leaked the information of so many people. It will say your company leaked the information of so many people. That's what happens when large banks today say that data has been leaked. There was an incident in Axis Bank in India a couple of years back where the data was leaked because of a vendor. But nowhere in the newspaper, or probably on the third row of the third paragraph of the article, you would see this was because of a vendor's mistake. It would say Axis Bank's data leaked. That's how it would say. And that means your brand and reputation is going to get impacted. So when you're delivering more and more goods and services through digital means, your brand and reputation is at stake because of problems or cybersecurity risks introduced by your supply chain and vendors. And doing a vendor data security assessment becomes very critical. What is the risk or what is the controls that the vendor has in place to ensure that your data remains secure? And then come to the other side of it. When we are consumers of this new digital economy, when you say that we are selling online and we are delivering online, we are also accepting services online. Now take this example. Let's say an organization decides that it wants to use an HR management system. You're locked down. Your HR management system is in office. You don't know how to reach that now. So what do? You sign up for a new HR portal, which is right as a software as a service, and you start using it. Who does this? The HR team. You don't ask IT about the risk. You use a trial for 15 days. You don't like it, move to the next HR service available. What happens to the data on the previous one, which you tried out but didn't work? The moment you sign up to these software as a service kind of portals, you realize that you have a 7-day free trial or a 14-day free trial or a forever free version, which is a freemium kind of thing with limited services. And most people happily sign on for their organizations because it's digital. You have to go digital. And when they move on from that, when they decide to stop using it, what happens to the data? Is it still available? Have you actually read the privacy policy of that particular organization, which says what they can do with the data? And this is not just a simple risk for small organizations who take those services anymore. Everyone is moving there. Most organizations today have decided or are in the process of deciding that setting up email servers is no longer worth it. I either go to an Office 365 or a Gmail or one of the other service providers and just use the service. Well, email is an IT problem. It's not a big challenge. An HRMS goes to HR, a CRM goes to sales, right? So when you're using all of these services, you somewhere skip IT because it is so easy to use. And the only people who were your gatekeepers who could tell you that this seems risky, don't do it, you just ignore them, you just bypass them. And that's called the shadow IT risk, because you are your own IT department now without the expertise of the IT guy telling you, look, this does not seem right to me. And that is a risk which you're going to contend to more and more. And the larger your organization, the more diversified with different teams, the more the risk is going to occur. And now that you're taking services online, there's the spear phishing risk also, which might come up with, which you're talking about. How are you going to very, very specific targeted attacks? So Sharad receives an email which says, this is for Sharad, this is what it is with respect to certain things he's already done. So spear phishing, which means I'm targeting very specific people knowing what they are to do. And that's a big risk for me as well. So the risk, because of going a quick digital way, are increasing really, really fast. And at every organization which is moving in the digital direction will have to learn to address these risks while they are going digital fast. So it's like trying to change the wheel of your tire while it is moving. Remember that. So change the wheel of your car while it is moving. Yeah. And that's how it's going to be for cybersecurity professionals. And there is no going away from it. We have to learn to do it or get help, whichever is the case. Right? So we need to be aware of the digital risks introduced due to the new digital channels in your organization. And it's very critical. Are you going to start accepting Bitcoin as a method of payment? Probably not just yet. But if you do, and when you do it, do you know what risks you are entailing? And this is not just a cyber risk, it's an enterprise risk. Bitcoins fluctuate wildly in their pricing. How are you going to manage that risk? So when you move digital, understand the new risks that are introduced and take care of them. That's the first point that anybody should understand in cybersecurity post-COVID. And I'm moving ahead now. The second point, the cost of risk. It's very interesting, right? We always wonder, what is the risk in this? But we rarely identify what the cost of a risk is. We say that cybersecurity has a particular budget and people will take care of that. We will implement tools and systems within the budget to take care of cybersecurity. Post-COVID budgets are going to be tight, at least for the foreseeable future. I would say at least for one financial year, you're going to have tight budgets. You're not going to have money splurging freely. You can't go and, scare your board into giving you more. The board will not do it. They don't have the budgets to do it for you now. Probably last year you'd have gone and scared your board saying, look, we have a big cyber attack coming up, give us budgets to put in this nice newfangled system. You would probably have had half a chance of getting it. Now you're going to be said, go and do an analysis for me, figure out if it is important and figure out another way. And that's what's going to happen. Budgets are going to be tight. Cybersecurity will still have some budgets. It's not going to be that they're going to be cut out from the equation. They will still have budgets because it is considered as a very crucial service, but it's not going to be as freely as before. So you need to choose wisely. Don't protect the risks with low probabilities and low consequences, which is why I want you to now focus on this image. You're not going to be in a fantasy world where you're going to be attacked by a tiger and need to defend yourself with a dagger. So don't prepare your jujitsu moves in such a way that you can protect yourself from a tiger. You're most likely going to have very simple risks that you need to protect, and you're going to have very specific high probability risks for your organization which you have to take care of. You can't really take care of every single thing. So you need to come out of the fantasy world, write down your risks, identify which ones are crucial and which ones you need to take care of. So how are you going to do that? How do you know that this is not an actual risk for you? It could be, right? You could actually be that organization which is living in this fantasy world, which has probably a tiger right looking up to you right from a cliff. How do you know where you are? And this is where, if you are a bank or a financial institution, or if you are somebody who is in a high risk kind of an organization, you will need to worry about what approach you take. If you're going to take a control-based approach, a control-driven approach, which says, this is typically how organizations do it today. They have a control-driven approach. Do you have a database access monitoring tool? Yes, no, it's a checklist. Do you have a data leak prevention solution? Yes, no. Have you got a next generation firewall? Yes, no. Do you have a SOC team and do you do real-time analytics? Yes, no. Now that's going to be that's going to change. If I say I don't have a database access monitoring tool, if I don't have any of these 4 things, am I insecure? Depends. It really depends on what risks you're facing. So every organization which is now in a control-driven approach, which says, okay, I am mandated by my regulator to follow certain steps, is going to have to find innovative ways to mitigate the risk. So you are not going to have to be doing tool-based thinking. You have to do risk-based thinking. And that's something which is very, very crucial for you to understand. So if you move from a control-driven approach, you have to move to a risk-driven approach. What is the risk that I foresee here? So instead of asking, do you have a database access monitoring tool, ask yourself, what risks do you have to your database? And if you say there is no direct risk, you can decide what kind of controls to put in place. Now, this is a very, very common perception in cybersecurity, that cybersecurity is always risk-driven. It has never been controls-driven, but it's a misconception. Most organizations implement cybersecurity as a control-driven approach. They are regulated. They have to follow certain steps. They have to follow certain guidelines. What do I do to meet that compliance requirement? I pick up the phone, ask my friend who's working in another organization, hey, what have you done? And he tells me, look, we have put this in place. Oh, can you send me the details of what you've done? And then you start looking at it and you start evaluating that tool, and then you invite 3 quotes, identify them, and you follow the process. It's like, yes, that's how it's normally done. It's not going to work now. If you want to have a secure organization, you have to move from that control-driven approach to a risk-driven approach. Really, really focus on your risk assessments. Make sure that you have identified your risks correctly. Make sure that you have identified your crown jewels correctly. Understand what you want to protect and whom you want to protect it from. And once you're sure of that, then you can identify what can go wrong and then put in the controls. Today, most of the organizations follow this exercise as a very, very paper exercise to show to their regulators. They can't do it anymore. You have to follow this because you don't have the budgets to put controls everywhere. You're going to have to choose. And obviously, risk management is about choice, what you accept and what you don't accept. So move from a control-driven approach to a risk-driven approach. While organizations would feel that they're doing it, it's a bit of a challenge. And when we have helped organizations many times, we have accepted them, we looked at their risk assessment and said, okay, what risk have you mitigated by this? And they look at us all blank and say, well, probably we need to think it through. So that's how most of our discussions go. So that's something which you need to worry. Really, really consider. Move from the control-driven approach to a risk-driven approach. Right, I'm moving quickly to the next one, the changing network. This is a little technical, so I'm going to move through this quickly, and I will be happy to answer questions about this at a later stage, because I don't want those who are non-technical to get all confused in this session. This is how traditional networks have been built. And you will see most networks are something like this. There is a nice little box. There is a castle which I have created. All my components, my servers, my databases, my network equipment, all of them are centrally located here. And I have a huge security guard here. I'm just going to put a pointer. And I have a huge security guard here, my firewall. And this firewall will take care of anybody going in and out. And nobody else can come in from anywhere else. So I'm quite happy. And outside, I have the big bad internet. Whatever happens here is not my problem, as long as I control it from coming inside, right? And now suddenly we had COVID. Everybody was working from home. And what happened? We quickly said, okay, home users, I will allow you into my network, but I will allow you securely through a virtual private network. Virtual private network is nothing but an encrypted connection between two specific areas. So a home computer versus your server, there is a secure connection, which is an encrypted connection. It's called a virtual private network. Now I'm going to allow you through this connection. That's how it is set up now. So most organizations who have been caught struggling to implement IT infrastructure during this COVID situation this is where they are. They have said, look, I have controlled everything, I have protected everything. And this has been applicable largely for government and regulated organizations who were very, very particular about having things under their control and securely within their own environment. When they suddenly face this situation where people can't reach office, they have had to set up this kind of an infrastructure. But that's going to change completely. This is what the network of tomorrow is going to look like. And most of you would already have some components already in place. You have some servers which are locally based in your organization. Some users are using it. You're using some cloud services. You're either on AWS, you're on Google Cloud Platform, or you're on Azure, and you're using those services. You're using software as a service. You're using either Salesforce, you're using Gmail, Office 365. You're using so many software as a service things. If you sit and try and write down what you're using, you'll come up with some of them everywhere. And then there's the big bad internet, which has just been divided into multiple areas. And not only that, you're also using apps from app stores, your Play stores, you're hosting your own apps, you're using apps from somewhere else. So you're now using a huge mesh of different clouds, and users are accessing it from everywhere. So what changes here is that it's a complete shift in thinking that you're going to have. It's not a fire and moat kind of a protection. It's not like a castle and moat kind of a protection. A firewall is not the only device that can protect you. You have to start thinking in a different way now. How can I protect such a diverse environment when I don't know where my network ends? I don't know where my boundaries are. My information is probably everywhere. And like I told you before, if you don't know what to protect, how are you going to protect it? Right? So your network has changed. Whom do you trust? And that's a very crucial question you need to ask yourself. You need to start moving in the direction of you need to start moving in a direction which is limiting the amount of things you trust, limiting the amount of connections you trust. And that's where you move from something like a central architecture to a zero trust architecture. And people have been talking about this for a while. This is Google's Beyond Cloud, Beyond Corp architecture, which talks about having a zero trust architecture with people at the center, managing identities and managing devices. So if you see here, managing users and managing devices. And everything else in your network is about managing those user identities and those devices, making sure that you don't trust anything connecting to any of your systems and data. That's what's going to happen now. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions on this and how this works. So we can discuss it in the Q&A because it gets a little more technical. So I'm going to move quickly ahead now. And I'm going to come up to something which everyone is talking about. The user, like we saw previously, the user is at the center. Managing identities is becoming a very crucial part of managing your security, which means, do I know that this CK is the right user and it is CK trying to connect to my network? How do I authenticate him? How do I know CK is the person who is supposed to use this service, and he is the real person, he is the real CK who is trying to connect? And that is the question that I'm trying to answer. So the users have suddenly come to the center of the attacks right now. A user is being attacked. Let me move to a bit of psychology in this case. Users working from home rely more on communication. You are communicating verbally, you're communicating through phone, through Zoom meetings, through Google Meet, you're communicating through your chat applications, your WhatsApp, you're communicating through Slack, so many different modes, which leads to more attack vectors. And more attack vectors, which means since you have so many channels of communication, there are so many ways in which you can be attacked. And the more number of ways which you can be attacked, the more chances of you being compromised. And right now, because of the ongoing situation where there is uncertainty about the future, there's uncertainty about whether you're going to have a job, there's uncertainty about what your company is going to do. Am I going to have pay cuts? Am I going to have, there's so many uncertainties which users are worrying about, right? Are shops and offices going to be open? Will I have to travel to work? Will I get affected if I travel to work? What if I have to take the metro? So many questions that you have to answer. And that causes people to seek out more and more information. And the more and more information people seek out, the more and more chances that they'll land upon sites, they land upon information which is not accurate or correct. Which is why you see right now that there is so much cyber attacks which you feel. There are so many cyber attacks that are going on right now. What do you do as an organization then? You need to understand your user psychology. What are my people going through? What are my people, as in what are my stakeholders? What are my employees going through? What are my customers going through? What are my partners going through? What are my board members going through? What are my stakeholders going through? What are my shareholders going through? Understand what they're going through. If I am a shareholder in your organization, I am worried. Is the stock going to go down? Are you going to pay me dividend? And I will go and try and look up information about you. Right? So I need to understand what is the user going to look for. Understand what attack vectors can be there. Right? So if I publish a phishing site which says, let's say I have bought certain stock in Google, and if I publish a phishing site which says, Google's next annual results revealed, take a quick peek before the price rises, you probably want to click on it. So we want to make sure that the communication channels are open, very straightforward, by understanding what the user is going to look for. Understand user psychology, understand attack vectors, and train users constantly. Talk to them. The communication is going to be a very big key in managing this. Most of the attacks have increased because people have started working from home, but the communication channels have remained the communication of old. If you're in an office, you'd probably not worry about it because you can see your business partner next door, you can see your bosses in the cabin there, you can see everything in place and you know what can happen. Now that you don't see anybody, the requirement for communication has increased tremendously, and that's going to make an impact, right? And monitor for anomalies. If something can go wrong, what can go wrong, monitor those. So that's the next one about users. And the last point that I'm going to talk about is the rise of cyber physical systems. Now, when I talk about cyber physical systems, I'm talking about the Internet of Things. I'm talking about systems that are traditionally belonging to the physical world, which are now connected to the internet. So now you have smart homes, you have smart lights, smart TVs, everything is smart. How do I make anything smart? By connecting it to the internet. Right? I sound smart myself by connecting to the internet and looking up Google, right? So anything can be made smart by connecting to the internet. But that's going to lead to a lot of risks. More remote access to your industrial control systems. Because people can't travel or don't want to travel to your industries, there is a very easy way. Connect your systems to the internet, automate them and make use of that. Right? Control them from your home computer. That's so nice. And that's what's happening. It's been gaining prominence. Right? But that leads to a lot of risks. Right? More remote access means more automation and more risks. A lot of these cyber connected systems, the cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things systems, they have certain sets of inherent problems. For example, if you have a software problem on your phone, You can receive an update. There is a software update. I'm sure you've enabled software updates, which can quickly tweak it. But if there is a problem in your industrial control system, let's say there is a problem in one of the valves that controls flow of oil from A to B, how are you going to address that? It's not a firmware upgrade that can solve it for you. You have to probably physically be there, and then you have to push that update to all the systems controlling it. It's going to be difficult. So more remote access, more automation, and more risks, right? Contactless, which means internet enabled. We are going to move towards a contactless environment where we are saying, okay, you don't have to worry about it. You make payments contactless. Don't give me cash, make contactless payments. Again, contactless means internet enabled now, because you're going to have to use the internet to do whatever has to be done. So the more you hear these words, contactless, Internet of Things, cyber physical systems, the more you realize that you are in an environment which is highly risky. So if your organization is talking about these things, IoT, cyber physical, contactless, you as a cybersecurity person or as a cybersecurity interest, a person with cybersecurity interest, needs to worry about what this means and needs to understand and handle the risks associated with it. Right. And for this point, it's very critical to understand that IoT related or cyber physical related systems, the skills required are very different from regular cybersecurity skills. You might not have them on board right now, but you're moving very quickly. You're moving digital, right? Your organization has to live, so you have to survive. You have to move digital. So it's better to understand the right resources now, because prevention is always better than cure. And these are the 5 points that I wanted to talk to you about. Remember our first old, very little, nice little Lamborghini? This is an old Fiat. But remember, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Which means cybersecurity still was meant to secure the organization, and still today is meant to secure the organization. You're probably not going to do anything drastically different. You're still going to have to do certain things, the basics right, but you'll have to do it with new thinking. You'll have to do it with new thought processes. You still have to go from A to B. And whether you have a Lamborghini or a 1970s Fiat, you're still going to reach there. It's just how you're going to do it that has changed. So remember that in the cybersecurity world, doing a risk assessment or being business enabled, understanding where your business is moving and then helping them plug those cybersecurity gaps is what cybersecurity has always been about, and it's going to remain about that. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And if you stick to the basics right, you're going to have a better cybersecurity for your organization. And with that, I would just like to quickly conclude what I have said. I know I took a little more time than I should have, but it was a part of the flow. So apologies to Gautam and Sharad for that, but we are open for questions, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Chaitanya. If I may come in, I'm still trying to figure out how I can change my tire while my car is moving. That's a tough one. But anyway, now we've received a few questions from our participants. And if I may shoot the first one at you.
Yes, please.
This is from a gentleman who is planning to launch an e-commerce business. And his question is, what platform would you recommend that he should embrace? Should he build his own website or should he join a marketplace?
Okay. I would say that is a very business question. And I would like to give you a very business related answer to it as well. When you're launching a website for an e-commerce platform for selling products and services, you'll have to worry about 2 or 3 things. The first thing is, are you selling products? Are you selling physical products? If you're selling physical products, launching your own platform will still have the logistics that have to be taken care of. How do I move goods from A to B? And then it does not make sense to have your own platform. It's better to then look at something like being a reseller on an Amazon or something. The problem with being a reseller on Amazon is it comes with a lot of its own problems. You will have to be in the good books of Amazon to be upvoted in the search. You will have to be, a lot of things that will happen on that platform. Plus, Amazon takes its chunk of money, right? Its pound of flesh, and they can change their rules anytime. So there are a lot of things that are there associated with it. So without understanding more about the details, a very broad view is this is what I can give you for if you're a product platform. If you're selling some kind of a knowledge-based product, like maybe some trainings or some other document-related stuff, then you can go in for multiple different ways. You can probably set up your own portal with a Shopify kind of a setup, and you can do your own sales using that, because now you're doing only a knowledge-based product which does not involve physical delivery. So it really depends upon what you're doing. But whatever thing you choose, understand that you need to make sure that cybersecurity is taken care of right from the beginning. You can't set up your e-commerce platform and then worry about security.
Okay,
I hope I've answered partially to that.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Gautam, you have some questions?
Yeah, indeed. One of the questions I had was, organizations have always had BCPs, Chaitanya, and they would have potentially taken care of COVID-like situations. Now, why should organizations revisit their existing BCPs? What makes it more important now, given the changes we've experienced? Why do BCPs need to be relooked at and change quite dramatically?
Yes. So just to give you a quick background, Gautam, we have been doing business continuity planning for a very long time. And we have been helping organizations set up their entire business continuity plans. But what we realized during this pandemic situation, there are certain scenarios which are not taken care of. Things like, so for example, not being able to reach your office for a long time, like maybe a couple of months, was considered to be a very, very black swan event. And you would not have planned for it. But things have changed dramatically. Now, when you have to relook at your business continuity plan, you would have to consider these scenarios saying, look, we might not be able to work from home. We have to work from home, and this is the new normal. And now continuing my business is to make sure that people can connect from remote areas. And now you have to figure out a business continuity plan for the new normal itself, which is why you have to completely relook at your business continuity plan.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question to that? So you mentioned please. About everything now being cybersecurity, now not being tool-based, but it needs to move to risk-based thinking. And you also talked about this transition from the old sort of castle kind of network into a more open sort of network. So does that mean that the risk profile of organizations has changed quite fundamentally because of the extensive work from home practices?
Yes. Okay, so the short answer is yes, it has changed fundamentally. And the longer part of the answer, while it would appear right now that you've just done certain changes to your network, what you have actually done is you have architecturally changed how your network looks. You have moved from a particular type of setup to a completely different type of setup. And you have done it very quickly because you wanted to be live, up and running during this 2 months of COVID related lockdowns. So while you have changed your network fundamentally, you're still trying to assess and protect yourself from the old risks. You have not found out what your new risks are. And that's what you need to do right now. What was that very specifically your question, Gautam?
No, absolutely. I think that was perfect. Sharad, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question from an insurance company in Dubai that is planning to launch a mobile app and offer all their services through that app, where customers can subscribe to their various services through the app, make the payments. And the question really is, what about the security? What are the aspects that this insurance company should look at? And can Risk Quotient come in and do a complete security audit before they roll this app out to public at large?
Absolutely. So yes, to answer your last question first, yes, Risk Quotient can come in and do a complete assessment of the mobile application and the entire IT setup of the organization. I would just like to add a couple of more points here so that whoever is the question, that whoever has asked this question, I would like to give a couple of more pointers here. The first pointer is that you need to understand what services that you want to allow from the mobile app. You might not want to allow your entire services that you are available through a physical means or through your website to be accessible through the mobile app. You might want to choose which ones are available and which ones are not, because it might not be a requirement probably that all these services be available. That's something you need to understand first. So the more restrictive you have it, the better it is for security. But whatever, it is a business decision that you will take. Now, once you choose to do whatever services to do, you will be connecting to different systems in your organization at the back end. You'll probably be connecting to a core insurance application. You'll probably be connecting to your any kind of a CRM that you're using, and you'll be pulling data from there. So not only do you have to look at this mobile application, you'll have to look at the entire thing in conjunction. You'll have to look at this mobile application, your core banking system, your CRM system, and all the interconnected systems as one ecosystem that you're changing. So you're not just pulling a tree from a forest or not just adding a tree to the forest, you're changing the entire environment. You're adding things to it, you're adding bugs to it, you're adding so many things to it. Right? So that's how you need to look at it. Take a holistic picture. And then once you have taken the holistic picture, when it really comes down to the implementation of how you have done it and decided, at that time, again, you can look at whether there are any technical risks involved, do an ethical hacking on the system, see whether your code is right, whether there are any bugs in it. So take a 2 or 3 step approach before you do this. That's what I would recommend.
All right, great. Gautam, over to you.
Yes, I've just had a question from Justin here, which says, let me just read that. Sorry, just 1 second. So the question is, in future, do we need to have a separate pandemic response plan or an existing BCP plan itself, which can be tweaked to cover pandemic response? So the question is, do we need a separate plan to take care of things like pandemics, extended sort of unavailability of infrastructure and offices and so on?
Yeah, so this is a very classic question that we come across in business continuity planning. Right? Do I handle all scenarios? Do I prepare for a Mars attack? Let's just put it that way. Or do I prepare for my everyday server being crashed? Now, which are the scenarios that I need to choose for my business continuity planning? It's a classic question that all business continuity planners have to deal with. And to that, I would like to say that, you might not want to have a very specific pandemic response plan here, but you might want to have a plan for extended unavailability of your premises. And if you had attended the previous BCP specific webinar that I had conducted, and I think that would also be a good thing to probably share with people here, a pandemic response plan is not a people strategy. It is a premise strategy for me. Your premises are unreachable. Your premise is still there, it's still connected, but you can't reach it. So
for an extended period of time.
For an extended period of time. So now you have to worry about a premise strategy. So when you do a business continuity planning, you look at what you're trying to plan for. So you typically plan for people, you plan for premises, you plan for information, you plan for your business partners. So there are 6 or 7 areas which you plan for. So I would suggest you plan for these areas, and your specific incident scenarios like a pandemic will be taken care of themselves. Right? The reason why organizations, organizations did not have specific pandemic responses in this case was because it came very down in the radar for their, except it was an exception, right? Assuming that nobody would be able to reach office was considered an exception. That's not going to happen. Right. So that's how it worked. And
I think it was fundamental because governments were not prepared for the pandemic. So I would imagine that organizations were even less prepared than governments.
Yes.
I've had another question come through. Sharad, if I can go through this. Yeah. The question is, we're using more and more apps now. Is using apps more secure than using a website? That's question 1. And the second question is, whilst using a website, we generally look for security locks. Is there anything like that that exists for apps?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a very basic question which we do come across very often. And let me answer it in two parts. The first part is when you're using apps from either the App Store or the Play Store. At that point in time, there are certain rules for hosting an app or posting an app on either the Apple App Store or the Android Play Store. And that involves having an SSL connection. So you have to do something called as an SSL pinning for it, which is exactly the same thing as looking for that little green lock. So if you're using an app which is downloaded from the official channels, App Store or Play Store, you can be confident that that person is allowed to put the app there only if it has that SSL pinning, which means only if it is secure, uses a secure connection, it is allowed to do that. Now, the second part of the question is with respect to what the application does. So an application will ask for permissions on your phone, and you have to be careful about what permissions you give. And that's very, very user dependent. So yes, it works both ways. It's not that an app is more secure or less secure, but an app on the official stores will always have some level of security. But if it is an app that is supposed to do certain things, then you will always be in a bit of a, you'll have to figure out what you want from that app. To give you a quick example, I think there is this thing trending in India right now is to sort of delete China apps, which means you download an application and it will run on your system and it will delete all applications which have a Chinese manufacturer. Apparently, we think China is the root cause of the coronavirus and we want to delete their apps. But leaving politics aside, installing apps like that could be a problem because you're giving those applications an extra permission to not only address their space, they can also look at other apps and delete them, which means you're not sure what that application is going to do. So you have to take a very conscious call and you have to be very situationally aware when you're taking care of this.
Right. There's a follow-up question to the one that I just asked you, which is a lot of sort of apps ask if you would like to use your Google profile or your Hotmail, your Outlook profile to create a profile for yourself for an app, or to create your own separate profile. Is one better than the other?
Okay, yes. I would recommend go with the Google or the application, Google, Facebook, or Microsoft profile, because then you can go to the central console and control who has access to it. There's not much of a difference any other way, but if you go using either, use Google to log in or, so that's a feature called OAuth, or it's called a centralized authentication service, which Google and Facebook and others have. So what happens is they only take the authentication information and they access certain pieces of information from you. And largely you can control that. And if you don't like it, you can just go to the central console on Google or wherever you are and delete those applications from having access. If you create your own profile, then it becomes a problem for you to go and delete it elsewhere. If you're going to create your own profile and if you feel that it's more secure for you, you don't want to share the same details everywhere, then I would recommend use something like a password manager app that is going to keep a track of everything centrally.
Question, Sharad?
No, I think we are on time now, so I don't have any more questions.
There was one last question that I'd like to ask, which is, how can Risk Quotient help with reviewing vulnerabilities and doing gap assessments? And does it do this, especially given the travel restrictions at the moment in place? How can this be done if an organization is in urgent need of a review?
Yes, great. So I think it can be done. Yes, that's our business and that's what we have been doing. So we can do any gap assessments of your cybersecurity profile. We can do technical assessments of your cybersecurity profile. To be able to do it remotely, that's the second part of the question. And risk quotient as an organization has always been very, very distributed. So we have always had remote connections. We've always been able to work remotely. We have always done all our project management remotely. We have always been we have had the ability to work remotely. So when the lockdown started and when all of this pandemic happened, we did not even miss a beat. We just moved on to working remotely. That's as simple as that. Now, to be able to do this remotely, we need support from the organization that wishes to have it done. They need to have their people accessible. They need to be able to provide us with the information we need. They need to give us a walkthrough. So we need to conduct certain meetings and sessions. So we run our organization on an agile project management approach, which works in sprints. So we just do a 2-week sprint. So we were very quickly, within 2 weeks, able to change our approach for all our customers. So if it involved going on site, doing certain things, within 2 weeks, all our plans had changed to be able to address all of this remotely. So yes, remote audits can be done, remote assessments can be done. We have various means and mechanisms to do it. We use different online tools to do it. And our project management office is capable of doing all of these things and handling any kind of changes to that environment. So if tomorrow things were to change again, we'll still be able to handle it because we plan in that manner. So overall, yes, to answer your question, we are able to do all of it remotely. We are able to do your assessments, reviews, and gap assessments remotely. We are able to advise you remotely on your risks because we have built those tools and systems which are available as a software as a service to you to do all of these things. And I think if you look at our website, you'll be seeing some of those tools.
Excellent. Sharat, over to you.
Yes, so I just want to thank Chaitanya for educating us on the subject, and it's an ongoing process. So we would love to do another webinar in time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks from now, based on a topic that is of interest to people in the region. So I'd encourage our participants to get in touch with me soon after this webinar, and let me know what are the topics you would like us to cover in the forthcoming webinar that we are planning to organize in 4 to 6 weeks. I want to also put out the information which is on the screen now. Anybody who wants to do a follow-up can reach out to me locally right here in Dubai through the email that's displayed there. You can call me. I pretty much work 24/7. And we'll be happy to answer any of your questions going forward. So Gautam, you would like to have the last word for today?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharat. Thank you very much, CK, for that. I've learned a lot today. All that I need to say is thank you to everyone who's participated today. Thank you, Sharat. Thank you, CK, for getting us a bit more enlightened. This session has been recorded, and a recording and a concise version will also be available to you online. Now, I don't know if participants want a copy of this presentation, whether we're able to give it to them on request, but that's something I leave to you, Sharat.
Yeah.
All I have to say then is stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.